Hello, everyone. I'm Arvada Mayor Marc Williams. Two new council members joined the team after they were voted into office in November of 2021. One of them is a veteran, housing advocate, and community volunteer, Lisa Smith. She was elected as a council member at large. I think her fresh perspective will make a big difference. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
So, Lisa, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I served in the Air Force. I was a policewoman, so did that for about 4 years and got a little tired of policing, so shifted over to social working. I was able to go to Colorado State University up north.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I liked it. But I was a veteran transition counselor there and then became a case manager. So a lot of my work has been kind of community focused. I've done a lot of volunteering with Team Rubicon, which was my previous employer until I just started a new job.
Well, tell us about Team Rubicon, because it's really an interesting organization.
I love Team Rubicon. So Team Rubicon basically deploys veterans and first responders to disasters, and that's nationally or globally. So in 2013, when those big floods hit in Colorado, I deployed with them for the first time. And it was just the most humbling feeling to be able to go to a disaster community and respond and help people rebuild their homes and muck out those basements that were quite dirty and destroyed. So we're able to do things like humanitarian issues as well. So I deployed to Greece and we did a refugee camp there. And that was for about 6 months. And it was just amazing work that they are doing. And it's about 160,000 volunteers.
It's neat. And I think that carries forward your spirit of community involvement and engagement.
It sure does. I also think my parents played a role in that. My dad is also a social worker. My sister's a social worker. My mom was an inner city school teacher, so they certainly taught us to give back.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Sure doesn't.
So your involvement in Arvada, you were involved in our Charter Review Commission. Tell us about that experience.
That was such a journey. It was really fascinating to see who stepped up to be part of that committee and really what was important. So we do that every 10 years, and we were able to look and say, is this relevant? Is this topical? Should we adjust? Should we change? And that is really our guiding compass in Arvada, and I think it's just amazing to see how Arvada comes together. There's people from very different ideologies, debating on Zoom, because we were doing that during COVID, but it was just an amazing experience, and I learned a ton.
Lisa, this was your first foray into running for elected office, right?
It sure was.
So tell us about the experience of being on the campaign trail.
How much time? I think it was enlightening, I would say. I think going into politics was new to me. I'm a big policy nerd. I joke about that all the time, but politics is a different beast. So it's a nonpartisan seat, but people are still very curious, where you align on that political spectrum and what your beliefs are. So, during COVID as well, it was an interesting experience because you would door knock, you would call, you would text, and sometimes you get them on a good day, sometimes you get them on a bad day. And it was very clear that people living in Arvada care about Arvada. They had a lot of local questions.
So what kind of questions and what kind of issues were you confronting or hearing about on the campaign trail?
Well, there were certainly themes, right? I think the number one theme was housing and growth. There were concerns about the lack of housing. There was concerns about the price of housing. And it seemed also different in different places, so to speak. So in East Arvada, there seemed to be a little more concern about the density and the way that we're growing. And in West Arvada was around the home prices. So that was a big one. Transportation was also number two, I would say. Not just I'm in traffic all the time, but more so I love using our parks and our bike trails. And people wanted to see a little more connectivity there where instead of just leisurely riding around in their bikes, they could also do errands and go to King Soopers and do that safely.
So what are your priorities as a new council member?
Well, as you alluded to, I'm a big housing person. So when I was a case manager, one of the things that I saw was if they didn't have stable housing or they didn't have supportive housing, a lot of times nothing else worked for them. And so I started to focus a little bit more on how can we be creative around housing. So when you think about the traditional way of, affordable housing and giving someone a voucher and putting them in there, a lot of times you cannot make enough money to get off of those programs. So what I'm trying to advocate for and bring to the table in the conversation is how do we work on transitioning people out of those supportive housing homes into self-sustainability? So that's going to be my big focus. It's also diversifying some of our housing. So people like me, a first-time home buyer, I'm a social worker, I don't make a lot of money, and council doesn't help either. So I think that it's important to be able to bring younger people into the fold in Arvada and be able to afford to live here.
What's been the biggest surprise for you so far as a council person?
You know, I think when people think about politics, they think about this divisiveness. I think the media really plays up this divisiveness, but Arvada isn't that way. You know, it's clear that people on council have different opinions and different priorities, but it's respectful. We have conversations, we have discussions, we have debates, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but the way that we're able to navigate tough challenges and decisions together is really empowering and encouraging for the future of local government.
I wish the state and the national folks could learn from how we do it in Arvada.
Maybe we can train them over here.
That would be good. So what would you like our citizens to know more about you?
Well, I love dogs. I foster dogs quite regularly. I think to the point my husband Eli is telling me I need to pull back the reins of how many dogs we have at our house we call Dog Manor. I love to travel. I've been to 19% of the world, and I've actually been in the newspaper in 3 different countries.
Were you breaking the laws there? Is that why
I can't disclose that.
Okay.
No, all fun stuff. But you know, my mom is an immigrant. She's from Argentina, so a lot of my perspective and experience was going back to Argentina and seeing my family there and seeing some of the struggles of different countries. I also have family in Italy that I was able to experience different cultures, different perspectives, and I think that is very helpful on council. So having that kind of breadth of experience, cultural diversity is just an important variable when you're making policy decisions. One
of the things I'm really impressed about you, Lisa, is that you ask a lot of good questions.
Sure
you know,
do.
you're not just sort of gliding along. You're asking good, hard questions, and I think that's really appreciated by the rest of us on council and by the city team.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you answering them. So you're the OG over here, teaching all the new people how to run. So I appreciate it.
OG, old guard.
Yeah, you're the old guard.
It's it's always interesting when you do have new council members in terms of how they're going to fit and how's the chemistry going to be, because we've had great chemistry in the city of Arvada for a long time on city council, and I think with both you and Randy, that chemistry is continuing, and you both understand the sort of the social contract that we've made in terms of wanting to make sure that exactly as you said, you know, if we disagree agreeably.
Definitely. I think it's also interesting to see the different council members' passions, right? You know, you have Bob Pfeiffer, who's really into transportation, or Randy's into sustainability, and I come in, you know, as a social worker and a housing advocate. So I think that there's a lot of different perspectives, and that's what really makes council great, because you're talking about complex issues, and you have a lot of subject matter experts there.
Well, Lisa, I consider you one of those subject matter experts, and thrilled to have you on City Council.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing for your community. Thanks for your passion, your desire to be involved, and congratulations on your election win.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm Marc Williams. Thanks for joining us on this session, and look forward to spending time with Lisa as we move forward. Thank you.